Still basking in the glow of ULM's win over JMU. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I am your host, Dave Schultz. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so we continue the conversation as we should. ULM shocking JMU. We do it with Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report. And, of course, he co-hosts the FunBelt podcast as well. He covers the ULM Warhawks, and they deserve a lot of coverage this week. We talk about the expectations coming into this season, how much they have changed. We talk about Malone Stadium and the House of Pain really doing a 180, and then to rain on everyone's parade. We talk about Coach Bryant Vincent longevity in case they do contend for a Sunbelt West title. As of right now, I have them as a Sunbelt West contender. We get to it. Let's do it with Dusty Thibodeaux with the Warhawk Report and the FunBelt podcast on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, more talk on ULM's shocking win over JMU 21-19 Saturday night, and now what is affectionately known as the House of Pain. We bring in Dusty Thibodeaux, co-host, or as I like to say, tri-host. He is with the Warhawk Report, but he co-hosts the FunBelt podcast with Shane Metlin, covering JMU and Howell Razor. What's Jeremy's last name? I should know.
Jeremy Harper.
Jeremy Harper, who covers Arkansas State. I mean, let's go back to the beginning because I've talked to Mike Hammond about this. I've talked to actually Coach Bryant Vincent about it. Now they are basking in the glow of being ranked 134th. What were your expectations coming into the season?
I don't know. And I say that because there were, 74 new players coming in on the roster.
Yep.
You didn't know, was this going to be 74 individuals on the roster, or was Bryant Vincent and his staff really going to get to where maybe half of them were playing well together, other half weren't? Did it somehow, I don't even think it really crossed my mind that all 74 would be able to kind of gel together and become a true team with the few holdovers you had from last year, but it happened. And I think that the resiliency and the leadership that Bryant Vincent's really shown has been the key difference of getting this team to buy in. They may not be the most talented, but they're the most gritty and hard-nosed football team that I've ever probably seen, and definitely the best that I've seen here at ULM.
Well, they're certainly doing it differently than most. Usually it's high-powered offense. It's a lot of points. ULM is doing it with defense, right? Earlier this season, Alonzo Barnett III for JMU threw for 388 yards. I believe coming into the game, ULM total had thrown for 407 yards. They still haven't thrown for 150 yards in one game this season. Aiden Armenta with a season high 147 yards on Saturday night. And now it's at least the second quarterback, starting quarterback with Hunter Herring coming in on short yardage situations, although I don't believe we saw him on Saturday. How would you say the progress has gone from General Booty to Aiden Armenta?
Look, I don't want to take anything away from Booty. I think that to say he has a high football IQ doesn't do it justice. The kid is so incredibly smart. Watching him play against Texas, even watching him play against UAB, he showed me some things that you don't see in a Sunbelt Conference quarterback, or really a lot of times even in a collegiate quarterback. But Aiden Armenta was Vincent's guy. This is the guy that he recruited for New Mexico long before he knew that staff was going to be turned over, long before he knew about ULM. That was his guy. That was going to lead to Lobo's offense. And so the fact that he was then able to get him to come with him to Monroe, he's got all the faith in the world for him to run his offense. He has the skill set. He has the mindset. He has everything that Bryant Vincent wants in a quarterback in order to be able to run that offense. And it's showing that he's really able to kind of go through and thrive right now in this offense.
Talking to Dusty Thibodeaux with the Warhawk Report. It is Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day, still basking in the glow of ULM's win over, look at that smile, over JMU. All right, so let's talk about, things perking up. So you must have thought, all right, they beat Jackson State 30-14. Were you holding out still? And then they beat UAB 32-6. We're finding out UAB isn't very good. And because they still did it with really no offense, it's just all defense. Points were put up, but not a whole lot of yardage. When did you start to think we may have something here?
I really thought in that UAB game. I mean, I think the Jackson State game is what it is, right? It's a SWAC opener. Sure. It's your FCS tune-up to get ready to go. They didn't exactly look like world beaters. They didn't look god-awful like the game is really in question. But it was like, okay, we have a pretty serviceable team. The Vegas odds at a 1.5. We're going to get somebody else. Then in the UAB game, when they just kind of came out and really opened it up, and that defense was able to force the turnovers, the offense was able to be effective in moving the ball. I think that's where it really kind of clicked. Like, hey, we may get up to 4 wins, maybe even 5 wins, just missed the 6-win mark. Texas is what it is. I mean, Texas is back. That's probably the fastest receivers and defensive backs I've seen in a long time, even covering the Warhawks, going to SEC games and everything. But you can't take much out of that game. Other than they did okay in the first half with the offensive line, be able to hold Texas in check, get a little bit of a running game going, is what it is.
I mean, they did pretty good against Arch Manning. He didn't have great numbers.
No, he really didn't. I mean, he was serviceable. I think he was like 250, 260, 4 touchdowns, but the 2 picks. There's your stat line that the last 2 quarterbacks to start for Texas, Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, have both thrown a pick in their debuts, and it was against the Warhawks.
Nice.
So, but then in the Troy game, I felt like that was a great slugfest. And while it wasn't the sexy score, it wasn't the big blowout, it wasn't even a comfortable, hey, we won this game. It showed how gritty this team is and how they're just going to keep grinding and grinding and grinding in order to get more points than the opponent team, which at the end of the day, Bryant Vincent even said early on in the year, I don't care if we beat a team 2-0, as long as we have more than them. That's all we really care about. And I think that's what we've really seen. Me being kind of putting on the fan hat, we want to be able to see our quarterbacks throw for 350, all these receiving, the big explosive plays. But at the end of the day, seeing that 4-1 and not a 1-4, I'll take it any way I can take it.
Dusty Thibodeaux with the Warhawk Report, co-host of the FunBelt podcast as well. He is joining us. Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, a few things to get into that. Like you said, and JMU found this out, it's hard to win on the road. So the Troy win, again, I don't care what the score is, it is hard to win in college football on the road. JMU found that out. Alabama found that out. Doesn't matter what level you're at, it's hard to win on the road. And I thought in that Troy ball game, again, there wasn't a whole lot of passing. There was one big pass play that I think set up a touchdown. But for the most part, when they were trying to ice the game, they just ran the ball. They just ran it right down Troy's throat, and that iced the ball game.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? You always hear about the SEC being kind of the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I think ULM's at, 5-6 yards in a cloud of dust. Right. But, hey, that's 2 downs, and you're moving the sticks, which is really all you want out of an offense. Ahmad Hardy really has kind of come out of nowhere. We thought that Hunter Smith coming in this year as the returning rusher from last year, 500-600 yards from a year ago was going to be the name to know about. But Hardy's really come in and dominated. I liked Oz Smith leaving the spring. I think we've seen him have a handful of touches. And then the late signee of James Jones out of Garden City Community College, man, there's so many running backs, but at the same time, when you see that is the key to the offense, you got to have that stable of running backs. And I still don't think that we've seen even all the guys at that position in the game.
Let's take a timeout. We'll come back more with our conversation with Dusty Thibodeaux of the Warhawk Report and FunBelt podcast. But first, 3, 2, 1. Let's take a time out. We'll come back and talk more with Dusty Thibodeaux of the Warhawk Report and FunBelt podcast. We'll talk to him about the new atmosphere at Malone Stadium, affectionately known as the House of Pain, and how much have those expectations changed now that ULM has started out at 4-1. We'll do that right after I tell you about Roy. All right, Sunbelt fans, it's time for the Roy Player of the Week. The Roy app lets you directly support your favorite athletes. Unlike collectives, where you make a donation to a general fund, Roy lets you choose the specific athlete you want to support. You back the players you care about, and in return, get exclusive content after the season, like personal videos and updates. And the best part is it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't create the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm choosing Mackenzie Ryan, the punter from ULM, unsung hero in that ball game. Cam Whitfield had 4 sacks for the Cajuns. He was outstanding. Braylon Braxton, outstanding game for Marshall, quarterbacking them to a win. But Mackenzie Ryan, who's never played football before, Australian, and of course he's 26, kicked 6 punts. All 6 punts were within inside the 20-yard line of JMU. He was the unsung hero, and he is this week's Roy Player of the Week. We just contributed $100 to his campaign on Roy, and I just want you to join me by making a payment as little as $10. When enough of us can contribute, it's not just about the dollars, it's about the message we send to Mackenzie Ryan together. Our collective support helps to keep him connected to ULM. Plus, Roy is doing their part to bring fans closer to their schools and athletes with an exciting giveaway. Roy is giving one lucky fan 2 tickets to any game of their choice in November. Here's how to enter. Just download Roy in the App Store or Google Play. Use code LOCKEDON when signing up, and you're entered. Already on Roy? Make a payment to any athlete's campaign, and you'll also be automatically entered. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for official rules. Download Roy and try it out. There's no subscription, no recurring fees. And for as little as $10, you can get into the NIL game. Roy, support the players, change the game. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's get back to our conversation with Warhawk Report and FunBelt PC co-host Dusty Thibodeaux. We talk about the changing atmosphere at Malone Stadium, a House of Pain, and how expectations have changed now that ULM has started out 4-1. All right, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the House of Pain, and I don't mean to be insulting, although probably some will take it as such, okay? First of all, what was the attendance on Saturday night? Because I think the cameras were, on the ULM side, and that's where the crowd was, looking across the way where there was nobody.
I think the announce was like 21 and some change.
All right.
Maybe if we round up, it's 22. If you want to round down to say 21, somewhere right in there. Not a bad crowd.
No, that's a pretty good crowd. That's a very good crowd. Okay, so maybe more will start to come out because ULM had this odd home field advantage where there wasn't big crowds, there wasn't a big atmosphere, and teams would be flat because usually you go on the road and you get all that energy from the crowd and silencing the crowd. When you're there and you don't have anybody to silence, you come out flat. And ULM every now and then would upset some teams coming into Monroe, Cajuns being some of the most obvious ones when Cajuns were better, and ULM would still beat them, and others as well, right? They should have beaten App State last year. They sort of gave that one away, I think, and one more. But that's the way it has been. Teams come in flat because there's no energy to feed off of. Now that's going to be a 180. Now, all of a sudden, Bryant Vincent in a month has created a home field advantage at Malone. Is it Malone Stadium?
Malone Stadium.
Malone Stadium. So how do you think that's going to help this season and moving forward? Because it is turning, and it's turning quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the advantages of playing, I guess, for ULM at Malone Stadium, a lone stadium as it was for a while because the M had burned out even. But, you can insert your own joke there. But, it's tough to get to Monroe. And teams don't stay in the Monroe, West Monroe area. They typically stay in Shreveport or they stay even in Jackson. So you're an hour and a half, 2 hours away that you're going to have to bus to Monroe. So you're already kind of weary by the time you even roll up to Malone Stadium.
goodness.
And then, as you said, I've talked with players from around the league, and they're all like, "Man, I hate playing there because it's like junior high." He said,
Yeah.
"There's nobody there. You can hear that one person screaming at you, and he's like, it's not fun. You don't feel like you're really in a true game environment." With that said, as you talked about, Bryant Vincent being able to flip the script and really give Malone Stadium some atmosphere, some energy. I don't know what that's going to be like, because I think the only times we've really seen that is when we've had that visiting team come in and maybe they were playing for something, so they traveled well. They had the bigger crowd. And then obviously the big outlier, the largest crowd in stadium history, the Baylor game of 2012, that was absolutely bananas, nuts, crazy, whatever other words you want to say. And you can find it on YouTube. There was not an empty seat in that stadium. Water lines breaking ahead because of all of the pressure, running out of concessions, just everything that could go wrong went wrong, but it was still an absolute amazing show. And then the fact that you almost pulled it off if it weren't for a late fumble to kind of seal the deal.
All right, so we may have that atmosphere at the end of the year. I will say a source within the ULM athletic department pointed out that it could be a heck of a matchup if things work out for both teams towards the end of the season, with the Cajuns playing in Monroe. We're talking to Dusty Thibodeaux, Warhawk Report, also co-host of the FunBelt podcast. Is FunBelt PC? Is that what you call it? What?
FunBelt PC is our X or Twitter handle.
Okay. All right. Oh, podcast. There you go. All right.
There it is.
Just got it. All right. So how have your expectations changed, right? Because can't have a letdown, but let's be honest, they should be 5-1 and 3-0 in the conference after beating Southern Miss. All right. Don't count the chickens, but maybe I can count them. You can count them. ULM better not count them. All right. Just don't do that. All right. Because it's got if this game was on the road, it'd be worse, because it's got letdown game written all over it after welcoming an undefeated and high-powered offense, JMU. Southern Miss is basically a mess. Unfortunately, it appears that the Fighting Will Halls is, on the way out. Not happy about that, but it is what it is. So you're going to be 5-1 heading to South Alabama. I don't know what that's about either. They seem to be Jekyll and Hyde so far this year. How have your expectations changed? And I mean, we got a Texas State game that's at the end of October. That's in Monroe, right? I mean,
it is.
Yeah, I mean, God,
we're playing with house money right now. I mean, like I said, the over under wins was a game and a half.
Right.
We're at 4. We've already doubled what we did last year. We're where we were 2 years ago. Right now, I think the short-term goal is let's get to 6, because 6 is going to get us into that postseason.
Right.
But as soon as we hit 6, how do we get to 7? We get to 7. How do we get to 8? And just continuously trying to grow and grow and grow and grow. But for me right now, I think the biggest thing is, can we hit 6 wins to ensure that we're headed to some great destination in the postseason?
So, I mean, you don't want to be in the Independence Bowl? Is that what you're saying? You don't want to be in the Independence
Bowl? It didn't fare out so great last time. So I'd rather have the climate control of maybe New Orleans.
Right. Got it.
If we're going to go cold, you know what? We might as well go to Idaho and go live it up on the blue turf.
There you go. Talking to Dusty Thibodeaux with the Warhawk Report and co-host of the FunBelt podcast. All right, but as you mentioned, let's get to 6. Well, those 6 you could have 6 heading into Texas State, because I think right now, as of right now, based on what we've seen, not what we think, all right, but what we've seen, ULM is a Sun Belt West contender.
Those are crazy words to hear. I mean, and I'd say that seriously. Like, that's just not something that I expected to hear in Bryant Vincent's first year, with the high roster turnover, with, the deck kind of stacked against you that you have, that traditionally was a good UAB team coming to town out of the American. Then you have Texas, obviously. You have James Madison after that. Southern Miss was supposed to be a contender this year. And then, as you said, South Alabama. no, we shouldn't be contenders of the West. We shouldn't be sitting at 4-1, but we are. And so we always joke about the old Chief Brave spirit when they were the Indians, that he's angry, whether it be that, buildings were torn down and progress was made, that we retired the mascot, whatever. The Chief seems to always be pissed on the Bayou. And that's why there were always weird losses and just weird things going on. I don't know if the Chief died. I don't know if Vincent has some kind of voodoo with him, but the Chief seems content this year, and we kind of like it.
Yeah, because Texas State hasn't been nearly as consistent. I thought they had an uneven victory against Troy. Cajuns with a nice win against Wake, right? Going in there and not letting Wake take the lead. A workmanlike win over Southern Miss. I probably should not have taken that ball game in the 17 points, since they haven't won there in 31 years. More than that, actually, but they haven't beat Southern Miss in 31 years. That may be a me problem. But just as those teams have won and moved on, that's what ULM has done, right? They've blown out UAB. They had a win and move on against Troy. They had a win and move on against JMU. Maybe that's more impressive than a win and move on. But nonetheless, like you said, it doesn't matter if you win by 1 or by 30. There is a little judging in college football when it comes to rankings. But other than that, you are what your record is. And like you said, they're 4-1. You either win or you lose. There's no judging like diving or gymnastics or anything like that. And so what's the atmosphere around campus, around town? Because a good football team can lift all the spirits around the area.
I think that Sean Fox with the local ESPN affiliate said it best. I think Warhawks have some PTSD, that people don't believe it. They're weary about buying in, but people are starting to kind of buy in, starting to kind of listen to the hype. But they're also still kind of keeping it at an arm's distance, knowing that, hey, we've seen this rodeo before where we had 4 quick wins and then nothing happened in the postseason. Everyone always wants to reflect back to the 2012 year where that was a 8-4 regular season record, but didn't get the bowl win. Got blown out at home by the Cajuns, including the last-second Hail Mary. Right. Not able to really get some of those wins that really they should have. So I think that there's a lot of people that are cautiously optimistic about it, but they're still not quite there yet.
Well, I can certainly understand that. And of course, when you are, you're playing with a little bit of fire when you're not putting up a lot of points, because, if there's no instant replay, right, that's an interception and JMU has the ball around midfield. So somewhere along the way, a bounce or a call is not going to go ULM's way, and a 21-19 lead can be a 22-21 loss. They had a muffed punt, and I don't know about you, but when you're running full speed, you should not be catching a punt. And 2 plays later, that turns into a touchdown for ULM. That's the kind of thing that gets you to 4-1 when you're ULM.
And that's the ones, like I said in the past, where the Chief, muffs the punt, and James Madison somehow winds up with 10 points off of, the conversion. And you look at it, that was really the difference of the game, was that return for the touchdown, because that's what really gave them the lead, and they never looked back from there.
That's right.
James Madison was able to get close with the 14-13 lead, but that was really it. And for the most part, it was ULM's kind of grinded out offense that even if they weren't moving into the red zone to score, they were also killing that clock that James Madison really had no time to try to beat ULM.
All right, one more timeout. We'll come back, wrap up our conversation with Dusty Thibodeaux of the Warhawk Report and FunBelt Podcast. We talk about the new AD, John Hartwell, who is as straight a shooter as you can find in college athletics. And, of course, we rain on People's Parade, because if ULM continues on this current projection, how much longer would Bryant Vincent be in Monroe? We'll do that after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Started out 6-0 last week. 6-0. Texas State, Cuse money line, Cuse with the points. Tulane, Navy over, and Navy with the spread. And then we had it on South Alabama, we had it on the Cajuns, and we had it on Clemson. The thing is, there's no way I'm going 9-0. I knew it. I was 6-0, and those other 3 games were in a 5-team parlay as well. I should have faded those just in case. My mistake. But a good week. 6-0, a good week, nonetheless. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report and one of the co-hosts of FunBelt Podcast. We talk about John Hartwell, one of the straighter shooters you're going to find in college athletics. And, of course, the more success that ULM has, the more opportunity Bryant Vincent may have to move on. All right, we also ask Dusty what he thinks the regular season record will be for Monroe. Let's get back to it. He's Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report and FunBelt Podcast. He's Locked On Sunbelt. All right, a couple more questions for Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report and FunBelt Podcast with Shane Metlin and Jeremy Harper. Go subscribe to FunBelt PC. All right, so going to rain on a little bit of a parade. But I'll tell you, before I get to that, what has your interaction been with John Hartwell, the AD? Because I've never met an AD like him. We've seen him on the field the last couple of weeks, embracing Bryant Vincent. That's great. That's good stuff. We've seen that before. But he is as straight a shooter as I've ever heard. He came on the radio in Mobile before he ended up with Monroe. And I don't know if people know this in Monroe. He was getting the Auburn AD job. He was getting that until John Cohen decided he wanted it. And so instead of taking the Utah State AD, they took the Mississippi State AD. But he was getting that job. He came on the radio and lobbied for it. I've never heard that before. He was from Mobile. His family went to Auburn. He wanted that job, and he made no bones about it. Now he goes on, and he's talking on Monroe Media, talking about the new contract that was just signed, why it was just signed, what took so long. I hope Bryant Vincent has been getting paid with no contract signed. But he also mentioned how progressive it is for buyouts both ways. But he also said, look, if we win 9 or 10 games this year and 9 or 10 games next year, obviously he's going to move up. Now, he wins 9 or 10 games this year, wins a Sun Belt championship, he's probably moving up. All right. It is what it is. You can only pay him so much. Other schools will be able to pay him more. How much? We'll get to that part later. How much interaction have you had with John Hartwell? Because he is one of the straighter shooters I've ever had to deal with or dealt with in college football, college sports.
We text about every other day, talk about once a week. I mean, we really do. Last night on our subscriber board, we had a one-on-one there with Hartwell, just kind of getting the inside scoop of what's going on around ULM and the athletics. Yeah, I mean, he's a straight shooter. There's no cards held too tight to the vest, and so it's a different experience when you can kind of understand the hows and the whys of the business side of athletics, as opposed to just the kind of lip service of not really being able to explain fully why a contract took so long and why, we have to raise ticket prices and why we have to do NIL this way or anything like that. It's always great to hear the message from the guy behind the curtain.
All right, so then we go to that next spot because, right, as excited as we are, right, the better that ULM does, we have a couple of issues with this. The more chances that Bryant Vincent is going to get a better job, or I will rephrase that, a higher paying job. Although somebody responded that if G.J. Kinney moves on, they would love Bryant Vincent. Of course they would. But if Bryant Vincent isn't going to Texas State, he's not leaving ULM to go to Texas State. That's not happening. All right. It's not going to happen. But right, the more success you get, the more you're going to have to deal with. We're going to need a new coach. Is there somebody on his staff that would be left behind, you think, that would be ready to take over? Would my guy Ernest Hill from my Mobile days, former high school coach down there, would he stick around or would he follow Bryant Vincent to the next gig?
I really don't know. I don't know what the succession plan is. I always remember Bobby Staub, old athletic director for ULM, talked about In his jacket pocket, he always had his list, because you never know when your coach is going to do something boneheaded, get ran over by the proverbial bus or whatever, that you got to have those first 3 guys that you're calling to try to fill that vacancy. So I really don't know who would be on that short list. Maybe it is somebody on staff. Maybe it's somebody from a previous stop at Hartwell's career, or, kind of the networking that you have within athletic director of knowing a guy that knows a guy, or knowing an agent that knows a guy. It's so much of a business that I don't think you can really kind of paint that in a corner. As for Vincent leaving, good, because, ULM has never had a head coach leave for another job. There have been ones that have been told to go find another job, but there's never been one that left for another job.
Wow. So we have an issue, right? And Kane Womack's now having his issues at Alabama as the defensive coordinator. But Kane Womack went to Alabama because he couldn't get a job as the head coach from South Alabama in the G5, whereas Jeff Lebby, who was the offensive coordinator from Oklahoma, he comes down and he get a job at Mississippi State. And Womack wasn't a candidate either year when that was opening for 2 seasons. And then you got Billy Napier, who had all the success at UL with the Cajuns, but not having so much success anymore at Florida. I mean, would Florida even consider like a John Summerall, which they should, right? He's got to be one of the top, group of 5 coaches out there, but I'm not sure that they would. It'll be interesting on how all that dynamic works out, because I love me some coaching carousel.
I do too. And I think that you still haven't seen the final stop there of Cignetti. I think that he wants to keep raising his game more and more, and coming up with the great classic one-liners of "I win, Google me."
Yes, he is. He's a different cat. That's a whole different thing. On a side note, does he color his hair? I think he colors his hair.
I have no idea. I'd never wanted to get that close to him to find out.
No, I think he colors his hair, and I think he does it because he's older than most of these guys. And he doesn't want to look it because, it doesn't look good, I guess, as an older guy. I don't know. Well, we'll see if he moves up. That'll be interesting. Indiana is off to a great start, and they don't get their toughest ball game is Ohio State. That's it. They don't play Penn State, and Michigan is no great shakes. All right, Dusty Thibodeaux on October 8th, 2024. What is ULM's regular season record? We won't give you a bowl game because we don't know who that is against, or we won't even put the jinx on it that they're getting to a bowl game. So you tell me what their record is at the end of the regular season.
I'll go conservative. I think they can do one better. I think that they're at the 7-win mark by the time it's all said and done. Now, who exactly that is, I definitely don't know. I know I have some games that I personally would have heavier circled than others, but I'm not going to say, oh, they're going to beat this team by this score on this day. It's not happening. I think that they just keep grinding it out, get the wins, and we're doing a bowl preview show sometime in December.
Well, I'm going to say they're going to get to at least to 8, and you want to see some heads explode in the state of Alabama. Go into Jordan-Hare and beat the Auburn Tigers. All right. Heck, if you win that ball game, I would love to go back
to my hometown and get the win.
If ULM wins that ball game by single digits, Auburn's going to consider that a loss. Just telling you. All right, what's coming up on the FunBelt podcast and the Warhawk report?
Warhawk report. We'll have a preview coming up for this week's showdown against Southern Miss. Trying to find out, is this Will Hall dead man walking, or is this the resurgence for the Golden Eagles in the second half of the season? We're on Warhawk_report, always tweeting out the games. We'll be at the game this upcoming week for homecoming game against Southern Miss. And on the FunBelt podcast, we're available everywhere they stream, right next to Dave Schultz's Locked On Sunbelt podcast. Big fan of it, by the way. There's no telling what we get into on the show. You just got to listen and not take it too serious.
Well, I just feel like Jeremy just rides Shane to no end intentionally.
Shouldn't we, though?
Absolutely. Yes, he completely deserves it. Yes, very much so. You got to love when they end up winning an NCAA tournament game, then they lose the next one, and on the ride back, the coach is leaving. That's how fast it happened. Metlin's trying to figure out what's going on as he's driving down like I-95 and Route 81 back to Harrisonburg. He's Dusty Thibodeaux, Warhawk Report, and the FunBelt Podcast. Thanks so much for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Best of luck to ULM, and thanks again.
Thank you.